Hey, everybody. I'm here today with Dr. Nora Jocelyn Brown. We are going to talk about unmuting your heart because this is really an epidemic, especially with women, of muting ourselves, keeping ourselves quiet. And I thought, who better than to come and talk about this than Dr. Nora, who is a cardiothoracic surgeon, meditation teacher, mother, wife, and awesome entrepreneur in her own right. I wanted to bring you on to talk about how we can unmute our hearts, follow our hearts more in our life, and the cost of not doing that. So, welcome. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you, Siddiqui. I am super excited to be here today. Really being able to speak up and to talk about these things that are near and dear to my own heart
Mhm.
and share them with other people in the world just really makes me feel like I'm doing my service to the world.
What is the cost? I know you're a cardiothoracic surgeon. You also teach meditation. What's the cost of not following one's heart?
I see this as a multifaceted problem. The surface of that is that when we are quiet and we don't follow our heart in a professional sense, we can find ourselves not speaking up for the promotion that we need or want or and deserve. We can find ourselves in negotiations for contracts and not voicing those parts of ourselves that need to really be expressed. So, what do I mean by that? You could have a lower salary because you're not willing to speak up and stand up for yourself. You could have a smaller benefits package. This is something that my male colleagues are really, in some ways, aggressive about going after. And yet, a lot of the women don't feel like they can speak up and negotiate when it comes to those things that they want. It could be that as you are in your working environment, maybe you don't have the voice to speak up or I don't want to say power, but the confidence to speak up enough to say these are my boundaries, these are the hours that I will work, and you find yourself being encroached upon, so you have more and more time at work and less time with your personal life. So you end up out of balance and resentful that all of these things are happening to
Mm,
you.
mm. I would imagine that there's quite a contrast between women in the medical profession and men. I know this because both my parents are medical professionals. There's a very real cost to women because we want it all. We're told that we can have it all in terms of you can be an awesome mother, awesome at your career, an awesome wife, an awesome friend. It's a lot to expect of oneself. How do you reconcile that double bind of I want to follow my heart, I want to have kids, I want to have a family, but I also want to show up and be the best physician I can and get paid like the men. How do you reconcile that for yourself?
Great question. So, my personal experience was that I spent 15 years from the time in school, from the time that I decided I wanted to be a physician until the time I actually got out into full fledged practice.
Hmm.
That's the story that we believe that we can have it all. And yet, they don't tell you how to do that. So I found myself trying to be 100% in every area all the time. And I got really close to burnout. I started to limit my practice. I started to limit my hours, and that worked for me for a while.
I worked for one of the leading medical institutions in the world as a photographer in order to compete for the good assignments, in order to be seen as someone that was willing to step up and show up. I needed to work that hard just to keep up with the men. There was so much internal competition within myself, and the price that I paid in my own heart was my marriage failed. I was working 18-hour days. My health failed. I was depressed. I was anxious. and I was working in this medical field, and there is an unrelenting standard for medical professionals. And I know because I was raised by two of them, you're never doing enough, you never are enough. The truth is, the women have to work twice as hard just to be seen as equal, especially now with COVID going on. How do you listen to your heart when you're exhausted, when you're teetering on burnout or maybe in burnout with a never ending need? There will never be an end to people's need for you to show up for them. How do you reconcile that, Dr. Nora?
Excellent question. I do know from experience that those of us that chose to work part-time, those of us that chose to do a job share type situation, were looked down upon. There is discrimination that happens because we're not pulling twice our weight. We're not willing to do more than everybody else around us is doing. It's still there.
Mm-hmm.
And in the time of COVID, there are no rules. You are expected to be there and you are expected to give as much as you can possibly give. The problem with that is that you end up an empty shell faster than you would have had you not had the lockdowns and the pandemic and these just overwhelming numbers of sick and dying people. It compounds, exponentially accelerates this, and really makes it very difficult to navigate for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. What I find is that mindfulness and taking time to pull back from the storm that's around me and come into my heart, even if it's just for a few breaths, gives me a chance to get a little bit of separation between myself and everything else. It's that little bit of space that allows people to create a little bit of breathing room in the midst of all of the chaos that's around.
If you're watching this and you're a female professional in any career, first of all, I'd love to know what pool you're swimming in, what profession you're in. Does this show up for you as a woman in your career that you have to work twice as hard to keep up with the men? Are you in some stage of burnout? And what does it look like when you speak up? What does it look like when you show up and you start to speak up about whatever it is you're experiencing and stand up for yourself and unmute yourself? Is there a cost to that?
Excellent. Yes. My cost to muting myself was that I sequentially downsized my practice as a way to balance work and my home life. I've seen women, I've got colleagues that have unmuted themselves and made a path that they really truly feel like they deserve and desire. So it's very challenging. It's only been in recent years that the idea of physician health and physician self-care has really made an impact in wellness. So many years we were expected to just give and give and not complain. The women especially not complain about it.
In my career in corporate, if I spoke up, I was seen as a bihash. The men could get really angry and demand things, but then when I spoke up, oh, now I'm a you know what. This self-imposed silence of, first of all, I want to blend in with the men, and I don't want to be seen as the one that's whining or complaining or weak. Mm-hmm. I'm going to wear my body out in the process of just trying to measure up to my own standards. Did that show up for you at all?
Absolutely. There was an episode where I was having a review, and this is where I really had the awareness as I look back that I muted myself. Mm-hmm. I didn't get the review I was expecting. And instead of breaking down in tears, which is what I really, truly wanted to do, I shoved it all down. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, my emotions were very regulated. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things like a lot of my colleagues did. And yet I wasn't happy either. So nobody really knew whether I was happy or sad. But fast forward a couple of years, and I had multiple times where I would break out in this horrible looking rash. I was having stomach issues. I was having insomnia. I couldn't sleep, even though I was
Mm.
exhausted.
Mhm.
And I ended up with this physically cold patch on my back that when I touched it was cold compared to the rest of
Weird.
my body.
Oh,
Yeah.
behind your
And
heart? Behind your
yes,
heart? Like you
behind my
became
heart.
the ice queen. You froze your emotions and then it literally showed up as a cold patch on your back.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
It's taken a lot of slowing down and introspection
Mhm.
to really get past that. It was closed. In the process, though, I distanced myself from my patients. I
Mhm.
distanced myself from the people that I worked with. I distanced myself from my husband. So it shows up when you mute yourself in one place as a way to
Mhm.
protect yourself. That's what it was for me. It was just a way to protect myself. It shows up in all areas of your life. May not be right away, but it will be there because we live in all areas of our life. So
Mm.
what you do in one place is going to show up everywhere.
If you're watching this, can you please chime in and unmute yourself? How's it showing up in your health? How's it showing up in your relationships? How's it showing up in your career? Just telling yourself, how are you muting yourself? How are you holding back on taking care of yourself, speaking up? What is the fear? Is it I'm going to be seen as a bitch? Is it I'm not going to measure up? Dr. Nora has been in my programs for over a year. We've been working on being seen, being heard, being yourself with the visibility work. If you were to look back at that version of yourself that spent 15 years just to get to the starting line of holding a scalpel and being an active surgeon, what would you tell her about taking care of her heart?
I would tell her that the dreams and the desires that she has are valid and that she doesn't have to compare herself to anybody else. She doesn't have to follow the other people's rules. And that when she listens to those dreams, when she cares for her heart and she really looks out for herself, she speaks up for herself, she is her own best advocate, then everything else falls into place. You get the job or the career that you want. You get the relationships that you want. You get everything falls into place, but you've got to speak up and you've got to stand up for yourself, just like you would for your own child. But
Mm,
you've got to turn that on yourself
hmm.
or your patients.
I love that. If you know that you're a leader, you're a woman, and you're a leader, whether it's in your home or in your job, and you know that you need more community, you need more support, you need more accountability, and maybe you need some tools to come back home to yourself, we would love to have you join this movement of women that we have that are unmuting themselves. We're having an event on March 21st. Dr. Nora is leading it with me. And we are going to show up together as a collective and really dive into what is stopping us from, as Oprah would say, living our best lives. And our premises is that we have to get in touch with our heart's desires, unmute ourselves. We would love to have you. The link is going to be below. And Doctor, thank you for being the exception and standing up and speaking up. It's such an honor to be walking this path with you. You are amazing, and I can't
Thank
wait
you.
to see how you show up to support these medical professionals in burnout with all the tools that you have.
Thank you, Siddiqui. It's been a pleasure being here. And I feel so grateful to have been able to walk this path with you because before I started, it was a pretty lonely place.
Please consider joining us at Unmute Yourself Live March 21st through 26th. We are going to help support you showing up, being seen, being heard, and being more of yourself in all areas of your life. Thank you.